This is the first week of the spring trimester of 2017. I'm Jennifer Marie, and this is my Atelier diary. It's the first week of the new trimester, so we started a new long pose. This long pose on Monday, I just worked on small pencil drawings to get myself familiar with the pose. Tuesday, I started my big drawing on Canson paper with charcoal. This pose is really cool. I like it a lot. It's really dynamic. There's a strong lean of the figure. He has his knee up, his arm leaning on something that's holding a pole, another active arm that's holding another pole. And I thought that because it's so dynamic, you can see all the points, you can see like the knees are so different from each other, the arms are so different from each other. I thought that this was going to be a really easy pose to capture then, but I'm finding it really tricky and difficult, but it's still really fun. I was talking with Matt about this pose and why it's hard, and it's like a seated pose and how seated poses are hard because when a model sits down, if they sit down like slightly different way with their hips, it's going to kind of change everything. And since he has his arm and his knee kind of sitting on something, I think that makes it more like a seated pose rather than just a standing pose where the figure, they just have their feet down and they'll kind of move and twist a little bit. But I don't know if it's also because I'm also really familiar with normal standing poses. I can anticipate what the body's gonna do and how it's gonna support itself and tilt in different ways. But with Brian doing it this way, it's just pretty different than what I'm used to, I guess. So on this day, I just worked on getting the basic pose, trying to find as long of lines as I can to make up the pose. Wednesday, I really worked with just strengthening up what I already had. So I'm moving around lines slightly, still trying to keep everything pretty as simplified as I can and trying to keep those lines as long and as few of them as I can so I can still be moving things around. Thursday was kind of a mess, and I got really, really frustrated this day working on the pose. So I was pretty happy with what I did on Tuesday and Wednesday, and so I wanted to lock in a pose and start making it a little bit more complex with shadow shape and light shape, so I could be moving it along to try and paint this thing as soon as possible. But doing that, I'm trying to make the pose as dynamic as I can, and seeing Brian, the model, how he gets into the pose, he'll start off up really straight or lengthening his body, but still with a really powerful lean in he'll be leaning forward pretty far, but the shoulders will be back as well. So it just looks really dynamic, and I'm trying to capture when he does that and really push it. So I'm trying to push the hips back and the shoulders forward and get the twist that's also in his torso. And working on this, I just got lost with it, and the different pieces of Brian, like the hips and the shoulders, were starting to look like different pieces, and like those pieces were capturing Brian at different poses that when you put those all together, the whole of the drawing didn't really make sense. So towards the end of the day, I ended up taking my chamois cloth and I ended up just erasing everything so I could start fresh. So for the rest of the time, which I didn't have that much time, I just tried to resimplify everything. Well, nothing was there because I erased it. So just trying to do what I did on Tuesday and Wednesday, just trying to get the really simplified version of this pose with few lines really simplified and really making sure that I'm relating everything to each other. So when I draw the top of the head, drawing the bottom of the foot, drawing the bottom of the leg that's bent, it's like I'm relating that to the top of the shoulder and arm that's on the left, and really keep my mind encircling the whole figure and not to get caught up with little pieces, because I think that's what I did that really kind of messed up the drawing in that way. So what you're seeing in this photo from Thursday is really, it doesn't look too much different than what I did on Wednesday, since I ended up erasing and kind of redoing everything. But I would rather do that than keep trying to push a drawing where the pieces aren't making sense, because it's harder for me then to make sense of that rather than just going back and simplifying everything. Friday, Magda came around for critique, and I told her that I've been having problems with the shoulders. Brian has really broad shoulders, but they're also tilted in a way that the back one's receding, so I was having issues with making sure that the shoulders didn't look like they were straight on, trying to get as broad as they look, but make it look like they're receding away. So I asked Magda, and she said that it looked like I didn't have the right steep of the shoulders, so I had them more straight rather than tilted like that. And working on that then, and just lowering the shoulder that's on the right, really locked everything into place. I could adjust the head from that and the hips from that. And pretty early on then I really locked into a simple structure that I was happy with, that I thought expressed the pose really well. So then for the rest of the day, I was really checking myself for my simplified drawing by breaking it up a little bit and getting a more of a shadow shape in there and locking in a shadow shape. So for example, I was putting in more details like the shadow that from the raised arm, and how the lines of the shadow of the arm are different, and making sure that I'm relating those to other parts of the body. And I'm trying to keep in the mindset that I'm not, as I break up the drawing, I'm not breaking it up to make it look more detailed or more further along and more resolved, but rather I'm breaking it up to check my already simplified version. And so it's more like not going from a generalized pose to what I had to a more complicated pose, but rather more generalized pose to more specific. So by the end of the day on Friday, I feel like, well, I got everything in. I got the hands and the feet and the portrait in, and everything I think is as complex as it needs to be with it for a transfer drawing. But I don't know if I'm totally confident yet with everything still. I think I can make some adjustments to make it stronger. I don't know. I think I should work on the transfer drawing a little bit more, maybe not a full day, but maybe just half a day before I paint it. But I'm going to talk to Matt and Magda on Monday and see what they think I should do, because they might say that I could just correct those things in paint. So it might be maybe more beneficial to paint rather than working on the transfer drawing longer. We'll see what they say. Now for my cast. So my cast painting has been going really, really well this week. I got a whole lot done, and I attribute that to having spring break and taking an actual break over spring break, which I think was really good. If you watched my final critique video, I talked about feeling really burnt out. So taking a break, it really helped me see things coming back in, see things that I could do to correct it, and it was fun working on it again. I did a lot of things with correcting around the well, first, I guess on Monday, what I did was I worked on the baby that's all the way over to the right. I've kind of neglected that one and just worked on that group of 3 previously. So I corrected shapes with that, with the hand and the scroll, shadow shapes in the hairline. And then after that, I've really been working on just all the areas that are around the baby, so the kind of the background of the cast. So I started in the bottom area. You have the main focal baby with the knee that's bent. So I started to the left of that knee on the bottom, and I've just been working around all the way to the left and then up the cast, and I've started working over to the top, going over. So with those things, I'm really just trying to take all the generalized forms and colors and everything and just working on getting them to be more specific. Magda gave me an interesting critique on this on Friday, saying that since the cast is really big and complex, and this is the first time that I've worked with something like this, she said she wants to push me with working on leading the eye and how to lead the eye around this cast, and look at the actual cast, not my painting, but the actual cast, and see which direction my eye goes around and the parts that I find interesting about it, and to really bring those out in the painting, and then everything that's on the periphery of that really not blur it out, but kind of give like a smoky effect to it. So you know that there's information everywhere in the cast where it is, but there's really clear information in the focal points. And then you kind of, by not bringing too much attention to these other places, you put that mystery into those areas. So you can direct the eye into focal points, but then not bring as much attention to other parts. So I'm going to start playing around with that. I feel like I'm not quite there yet because I still need to and want to bring everything up to a more specific area everywhere before I start really going back to the focal points and making those even more specific. But I think that's definitely a good place where I can start thinking on how to work a painting that way. But really happy that I had spring break because working on this, I'm completely enthused with it again.